Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Questions with Matt and Mark. So I'm going to start first today.
Great.
So Matt, we've been hearing a lot about how especially technology companies are overvalued or expensive. So what does this mean when people say, a certain stock is overvalued or expensive, or that they have a premium valuation?
Yes. So viewers, traditionally in the markets, people try to value a company based upon its earnings. In what was very popular, Mark, in the 90s and 2000s, there was pretty much a silver bullet for this. And it was an analysis of something called price to earnings, or a PE. And how that's calculated is you take a company's earnings and you divide it by the market capitalization of the stock, and you get a number. And historically, anything above the trend, anything above 24, was considered expensive. Now, the environment has changed because the consistency of a lot of tech company earnings is there where it wasn't that way in the past. It was very cyclical with the market. Mm-hmm. And so I think a single bullet of saying, well, just because a stock has a high PE, that it's expensive, is really leaving out a lot of other details. Yeah. And I think it's no longer that silver bullet, viewers, like it used to be. Mm-hmm. So when you see the common headline that stocks are expensive because of this price to earnings multiple, I don't put any weight into it anymore.
Okay.
All right. So my question for you this week is in regards to all the headlines about the U.S. Treasury and the debt ceiling. So just in plain English, what does it mean, Mark, to default on debt?
Yeah, I think the best way to explain this is to use a simple example, right? Mm-hmm. So when you default on debt, it means you can't make your principal payment back and the interest payment back to the person or the company that lent you the money.
Sure.
Right? So, for example, if I lent money from you, let's say I lent $5,000 for you.
Okay.
And at some point in the future, I owe that principal, that $5,000 back with an interest rate attached to it. So you have an incentive to lend me the money.
Sure.
Let's say I go bankrupt and I have no money to pay you back. And that means that I defaulted on that loan and Matt loses out on that money that he lent to me. So a good example of this is the Evergrand case that was going on in China, right? That people were saying, hey, they're not going to be able to meet their debt obligations. They're going to default. So people were concerned that, there were a lot of institutional investors in the U.S. that had lent Evergrand money, meaning that the people in the U.S. weren't going to get their investment back, right?
That's right.
So that's what it means to default on their debt. The U.S. Treasury, the government, has never defaulted on their debt before for a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into today.
Sure.
But people are concerned. It seems like it comes up every year and it all gets ironed out. So not a really big concern in my opinion.
Latest I heard today is that they have money through or around October 18th is what the Treasury is saying. So we'll see if the politicians can be adults and make a decision.
Yeah, I'm sure that they'll be able to come to some.
I'm sure it's all politics right now.
It is.
Well, listeners, thanks for listening to another episode of Questions with Matt and Mark. We will join you next week for another episode. We'll see you then.